Hi, everyone. A very warm welcome to all participants who have joined us today for this webinar. Shopping Center Association of India is committed to fostering the growth of the shopping center industry in India. One of our primary goals is to facilitate knowledge sharing among industry professionals. We organize a variety of learning opportunities, including virtual workshops, master classes, and physical sessions. Today, as always, we are having an insightful webinar on sustainable shopping, how cooling as a service reduces costs and carbon emissions. CARE has sponsored this webinar. CARE has specialized in providing cooling to commercial and industrial buildings throughout Asia for the past 70 years. They pioneered the cooling as a service business model in 2013 and have helped over 50 businesses transition to the model. In doing so, they have achieved financial and ESG related targets for their customer while accelerating the world's transition to net zero. The main focus of today's webinar will be on how the innovative model of cooling as a service can revolutionize your retail spaces by significantly reducing operating costs and enhancing sustainability. Then second will be how outsourcing your cooling needs to a third-party provider allows you to pay only for the cooling you use, eliminating the need for hefty upfront investments in cooling infrastructure. And finally, discover how you could achieve all these benefits in an operating mall without any shutdowns. So let me introduce you to our panelist. We have Mr. G. Raghavan. He is a Managing Director, CARE India. With nearly 2 decades of experience in the air conditioning industry and about 8 years in the real estate industry, Raghavan brings expertise in both the supply and the demand sides of the business. His experience includes putting up a large mall as CEO of a development company in North Bangalore. Then we have Deepak Kumar. He is Chairman and Managing Director of Elpro International. He is one of India's first adopters of the cooling as a service model. Deepak and the Elpro property portfolio was featured in a recent BBC documentary showcasing their commitment to sustainability, and he joins us today to share some insights from his experience at Elpro City Square. Dave Macarinis. Dave is a Senior Leadership Fellow with the Advanced Service Group at Aston Business School and is a founding member of the SET Alliance. He is a core team member in the steering committee. Then we have Ravi Sibbal. He is the General Manager, Operations at Inorbit Mall. And before taking on this role, Ravi had 18 years of experience spread across 3 industries: hotel, exhibitions, and retail. Ravi has led the initiative of transitioning Inorbit Mall to the CAAS model, that is cooling as a service model. So viewers, before I hand over it to Dave, who shall be leading this session, if you have any questions in mind, you can post them and they will be answered at the end of the session. So over to Dave.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome everyone to this webinar. As mentioned in the opening, so I'm Dave McKernis. I'm a director at CARE and also sit on the steering committee for the SET Alliance. And before we kick into the session to really look at cooling as a service, what I'd like to do is just take 5 or 10 minutes to really share with you why we believe servitization is such an important business model and how it can help you, not just in terms of cooling, but in other areas as well. So if you haven't come across the Global Servitization for Energy Transition Alliance before, it's a little bit of a mouthful. So what is it? If you look on their website, it's a network of organizations It includes financial institutions and technology providers that are dedicated to creating a more sustainable built environment. And the way that we do that is we really look at accelerating the transition to clean and renewable energy through servitization. And that's quite a mouthful as well. So put simply is, we believe the as-a-service business model can allow us to transition to a clean and green economy. I think that's something we've all been looking to do, and we have looked to technology to help us do that. But we need to change the business model frameworks that we're working within to make it easier for us to do so. So what I want to do is I really just want to start by looking at this problem that we have and then see how we can solve it through servitization. And as this is generally you're all from the shopping mall industry and shopping mall stakeholders, investors, and technology providers, I want to start with this problem that we all are facing. The problem we have is shopping malls are good. They're great for communities. They're great for businesses. They're thriving sort of areas for people come together to eat, shop, be entertained. But the problem with that is carbon is bad. In every single time we talk about anything, we always talk about the impact, the negative impact it has on the environment. It's becoming more and more of a priority for our tenants and for people that are coming to join our malls. And the reason that is because shopping malls need something, buildings. Buildings are good, but again, carbon is bad. Why are buildings good and carbon bad? Well, electricity is good. And carbon is bad. So in order to have a shopping mall, you need to have a building. In order to have your building that you can operate, it needs to have electricity. And there's huge amounts of carbon emissions that are associated with that because all of the electricity that we're using comes from brown resources. So it comes from fossil fuels or non-renewable sources, unless we can move to solar. So as we're making that transition, this is always a problem we're trying to solve for. Lights, you need lights to run your shopping malls. Lights are good, but again, carbon is bad. So we have conversations around what is the best lights to use? Are they LED lights or are they not? So every discussion we have about something that's good and that's great that we want, we always have this negative conversation around the carbon that's associated with it. If you're a shopping mall in any part in Asia, cooling is good, carbon is bad. If you're in other parts of the world, heating is good, but carbon is bad. Cars are good. People come to your malls in cars. Cars are great, but again, carbon is bad. Every single time in everything that we do, it just keeps coming up. We always talk about carbon and the impact that it has. And it's even, Netflix. I saw a report that came out a few years ago that says the energy consumption of streaming services, actually the energy consumption associated with that is responsible for more carbon than the airline industry. So we can't even sit at home and watch Netflix without feeling bad about our carbon footprint and the impact that that's having. So put simply, life is good, life is great, but in everything that we do, carbon is bad. And I think a lot of you will be looking to solve this problem, which is how do we have all of the good? How do we have the Netflix, the cars, the lifts, the lights, the electricity, the buildings, the shopping malls without the bad? And that's becoming more and more priority for all of our stakeholders. So what we did is we did a desktop study to see if it was possible. And the question we asked was, are carbon neutral shopping malls possible? And we looked around the world to find where they were possible. So where is it that we have carbon neutral buildings? And you will be surprised, or may not be surprised to see, it's pretty much everywhere. So the dark green countries that you see here are ones that have fully decarbonized buildings. So when we're talking about decarbonization, there are two elements to it, right? One is the embodied carbon that's in the shopping mall, so in the construction of that mall. And then there's the operational carbon, so the energy it uses. So these are countries in the world in dark green that already have carbon neutral buildings, which means the operations is 100% run by renewable energy. We have big parts of the map where they've done proof of concept, so you can see in Russia there, and also huge parts of the maps where feasibility studies have been done. So if you look at Africa and the Middle East. So I think that the important thing to get out of this slide is that it doesn't matter what the geography is, right? We're not saying that carbon neutral buildings are possible in some geographies and not others. It's everywhere. It's in hot climates and it's in cold climates. It's all parts of the world. And actually, we see a huge amount of momentum in Africa and the Middle East really catching up with carbon neutrality and finding the ability to do this. So the question we then ask ourselves is, if, yes, carbon neutral shopping malls are possible, and we all want that, and we talk about it all of the time, why are less than 1% of buildings carbon neutral? If this is what we want, it's possible everywhere, we know how to do it. What is the barrier? And that, I think, is the key question that we need to ask. So what we did is we did a survey and we asked the simple question, why aren't shopping malls carbon neutral? Why aren't buildings carbon neutral? And there are a couple of reasons that the professionals give as to why we haven't been able to make that transition. Now, usually when you ask this question, you give two options. Is it a lack of technology and know-how, or is it cost? There's the two main buckets that people talk about. But when we did this the survey, we actually added a third bucket. So we asked about, is it a lack of technology? We asked if it was too expensive, but we also added a third bucket, which was it's just too complicated. And you don't see that on most surveys. But you shouldn't be too surprised by the results. And I'll give you a moment to, if you're a shopping mall operator now, what is the reason that you would choose? Would you choose technology, cost, or it's just too complicated? And if you look at the results, only 16% of people said that it was because of a lack of technology. About a third said that it's too expensive, but over half are saying it's just too complicated. And I think the reason this is not on surveys usually is because it doesn't seem like a very good reason for not doing something. If it's worth doing and we all want to do it, even if it's complicated, you should do it. But I think that's wishful thinking. I mean, it's human nature to do things that are simple and do things that we understand. If it's just too complicated, I think that's a very good reason for not doing something. And that's a reason I use for not doing a lot of things in my life. It's just too hard. It's too overwhelming. It's too complicated. And if you look at the conversations that we have as an industry, so all of the technology providers and all of the building owners that are sort of coming together in conferences and webinars like this to discuss this challenge of how they go carbon neutral, we're all focusing here. We're focusing on equipment innovation. It's where the entire industry is focused. And I think that is important that that happens because you do need the ecosystem of technology, but it's only addressing the problem that 16% of people have. And what we see with the SET Alliance and with many of the vendors within that and technology providers in the SET Alliance is actually servitization, or as a service, is the business model that addresses the biggest challenge, which is it's just too complicated and it's too expensive because service models are generally bought at pay as you use. So there's not a big CapEx investment. So that's really the shift that we want to see. And what I ask you as shopping mall operators is, what is it about the as a service business model that can help you overcome the challenges that you see? And if you are in the majority where it's just too complicated and it's too expensive, it's a business model that you should look into to see if it can support your operations and your business. McKinsey, so people smarter than I, have basically said that there has been a sort of a global migration and a change in the way that people are approaching servitization. So it used to sort of be called outsourcing. So you would outsource things that would be cheaper by outsourcing it. It was a cost-saving strategy. But now, as there are more sophisticated offerings and how technology has allowed us to provide more sophisticated offerings, it's actually grown in its reach and is being applied in many more industries and to provide many more benefits for the end user. So very simply, what does as a service mean? I know I always say servitization and as a service. When I say that to friends of mine, they don't know what I'm talking about, and they say servitization isn't a word they've come across. So what is it simply? As a service means really it is a business model where companies offer services on a subscription or pay-as-you-use basis, and they deliver outcomes rather than products. That's the key. And that allows customers to access expertise and resources without owning or maintaining assets. So think about Spotify, think about Netflix. You don't own the assets, you don't manage them. You pay as you use, or you subscribe for that service, and you get the output, right? So if you think about watching a movie on Netflix, you don't get involved in the licensing, the content creation, the servers that they're hosted on, getting them onto your device, whether it be a Samsung TV or an iPhone 14. You don't have to worry about any of the technology or any of the infrastructure that goes into getting that show or that movie onto your device. You just get the output. You get the movie on your phone. So that's what as a service means. And you see it proliferating across many, many different industries. So what we then looked at is we said, okay, so it's a real issue with carbon and how we move to a carbon neutral future. As a service seems to be a business model which is very convenient and can bring you to that future. And then we started asking ourselves, what parts of your business should you servitize and what parts of it should you keep in-house? So what should you buy as a service? And simply, if you use this framework, on the x-axis on the bottom, you have complexity. So on the left-hand side of the slide are things that are very simple. On the right-hand side of the slide are things that are very complex or complicated. And then on the y-axis, you have cost, right? At the lower down, you have cheaper, and as the higher you go up, it gets more expensive. So these are the two real things you should look at when you're identifying what should you buy as a service or what should you do in-house. So if I put it into 4 quadrants, the lowest priority really is things that are cheap and easy to do. If there's something that you do in your business that is cheap for you to do, it's very cost effective and it's super easy, then just do it yourself. You don't necessarily need to servitize it or buy it as a service. However, what I would say is that you can consider doing that, and you can consider moving to the as a service business model for these kinds of products if it's more convenient or has a better user experience. Convenience and a better user experience are 2 fantastic reasons for moving to the as a service economy. And examples of that, which is things that used to be cheap and easy, but is now better and more convenient, is things like entertainment. So everyone, if you take out your phone, you might have one of these on it. I already mentioned Netflix, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. These are things that didn't used to be super expensive and didn't used to be very complicated, but the experience and the convenience was so easy now that it's on my phone. So that's sort of easy to do. You can decide whether you should outsource those or not. When you then move further to the right, and you see that it becomes more complex, but it's still cheap for you to do as a business, then that's something that you can consider. So maybe you can review these activities every 2 to 3 years as you're looking at your business plans to see if they add any strategic benefit to you. So as a cost to your business, it might not be a big cost, but is there a strategic impact you can have by outsourcing it? So that's something that can be considered, but you can do that with your sort of strategy teams in your annual reviews or your 3 to 5 year business plans. And that's things like, communications platforms like Twilio, HR, like LinkedIn. A lot of people have moved to that platform for HR. And CRM is a big one. So a lot of your companies will have sales teams and business development teams. And that's managing a business development team or a regional business development team is quite complicated. A lot of us use Excel and meetings to do that. We spend a lot of time doing it, but it's cheap and easy to do. You can use Excel and you can have those meetings. But you might want to consider moving to as a service provider like Salesforce as an example. It might add a strategic benefit depending on your organization. So now moving up to the top where things are a bit more expensive. If it's top left, this is quite expensive but simple, then really that's something you should consider outsourcing if there are providers who have lower costs of capital than you have, and therefore can do it cheaper than you, right? So it's not super complex. You can do it yourself if you want, but how can you do that as cheaply as possible? So some great examples of that for me, the LED lighting industry is one of those, lighting as a service. So, if you wanted to go and change all of the bulbs and fittings in your mall to LED, that's quite a capex intensive business, right? That's going to take a lot of money to do that. But it's not that complicated. You can go through and do that retrofit project. It's pretty easy. And then once you've changed them, they're just on or they're off, or they're dimmed in some cases. But there's no real operations complexity for a light bulb. However, there are companies that are big and have big balance sheets and have a low cost of capital, so they can actually provide it as a service at a lower price for you, in which case you should look at doing it. Printing is another one. And then lastly, we all we all use Uber and Grab around Asia because those companies can provide us cheaper transport. Owning a car is not that complex, but it's a super capital intensive thing to buy, especially if you're in a country like Singapore, where I am. So those are areas where you can look at doing that if they can provide it at a cheaper or a more convenient level of service for you. But then you have the top right category. And the top right category essentially is things that are extremely complicated and extremely expensive. And those are things that you should really look at servitizing absolutely immediately. And I would go as far as saying you are probably losing money every day that you don't outsource these activities, because essentially these are often non-core to your business. They're often vital or critical components of your business, which is why they're so expensive and so complex. And there's a large operational component to them. So unlike lighting, which is not so complex, it's other things which would be very difficult for you to run, operate, maintain, and manage on your own. So examples of that, Rolls-Royce, I think, was the first real great example we saw of servitization, which falls into this category, where airlines don't own engines anymore. They don't buy them, have that capex sitting on their balance sheet, maintain them, repair them themselves. They outsource that to Rolls-Royce, and they sell thrust by the hour. So all the engines belong to them, and they sell the output. They sell the thrust. Data is another huge one. So I think all of us have moved to data as a service. We use Amazon Web Services, but I mean, you use Microsoft services, IBM services. Everyone is using those outsourced cloud servers. And then the other one, when it really comes down to buildings, is solar cooling and heating. So solar as a service is an absolute no-brainer. If you do have providers in your area, I would say it's something you should look at, because they can essentially provide all of the capex to install those panels, and then essentially usually you get cheaper pricing for your electricity, and it's renewable. Heating is a big one. So Energy Nest here, Yes Group is a solar as a service business, and then we have Care, which does cooling. So I think I kind of wanted to show this sort of framework so you can really evaluate what is it that you should be buying as a service. Because like I said, this webinar is going to talk about cooling as a way to bring to life the as a service model, but really it applies to every part of your business, and how you can procure all of these different things as a service. And I think every industry now has a provider in it that allows you to procure it as a service. There's very few industries that haven't sort of been disrupted by this business model already. So that's a very quick introduction to the SET Alliance and the as a service business model. This is how it's sort of brought to life in a few different areas of your business. And today we're here to talk about a bit more in detail how cooling as a service can essentially do these things I've talked about in terms of reducing costs and carbon emissions. So with that, I would like to hand over to Raghavan to share cooling as a service from Care.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your attention and thank you for joining us. Thanks, Dave, for phenomenal setting of servitization as the context in which cooling as a service comes under. Let me talk a few minutes about how cooling as a service could help mall owners and operators like yourselves. Can I move to the next slide, Dave? So let's just get right to the core of the issue. What does cooling as a service do for shopping malls? First and foremost is 30 to 50% reduction in cooling energy. We have over the last couple of years given proposals and taken up jobs where the energy reduction potential ranges up to 50%, in some cases even higher. Whether it is 30% or 50% is a function of where you are at this point of time with respect to your plant and with respect to your current set of operations. Next slide, please. Because of the energy reduction, there is also a reduction of total cost between anything between 10 to 30%. The operations themselves, besides energy, and the fact that there will be lesser breakdowns and greater reliability adds to the possibilities of further saving in the total cost, total cooling cost. First of all, it enables your buildings. I think all of you are concerned about, building ratings and carbon footprint, and therefore the levels of efficiencies that are possible to provide under CAS take you right into the possibilities of getting your building, the whole building, into platinum status, if that is what you want to do. So cooling as a service enables your HVAC component of the building and the shopping mall to be able to get platinum certification to make the building really something that your multinational clients and other retailers would like to look for. So when you achieve all these, the real big point here is that as a owner of the shopping mall, you do not have to put your own capex. You've got other users and crying needs for the capex, which are more front-ending, customer-facing applications that are possible, rather than diverting that capex into the basement, into heavy machinery. So you do not have investment of capex while getting all the benefits of cooling, energy reduction, as well as total operating cost. And already earlier on, I think Anjeev, when he introduced, mentioned that not only don't you have capex, you also will not have a shutdown requirement. Many people could be thinking, hey, gee, we are already having a running mall. How can we switch to this? The point is that technologies have developed in such a way that you can switch to cooling as a service without having to have any kind of a shutdown. And the most important thing in the business model is that there is a single point accountability for results rather than intermittent variables, but you will get results in terms of getting chill water at a certain temperature and reliability of a certain high level, and the plant will be operated by experts. And that's a very important point, rather than the current state of affairs where building owners, mall owners like you, are having to deal with multiple vendors in order to get the delivered cooling for the mall. Next slide, please. Ideal properties, of course, we are talking here in terms of retail. All large buildings which are using central air conditioning plants are good candidates for switching over to CAS. And in terms of retail malls, ideal to switch over will be cooling systems which are 10 years or more old, and the mall is about 300,000 plus. These are all very good candidates for immediately looking at cooling as a service as an opportunity for you to reduce costs and also reduce energy. So how do business owners benefit? I already spoke a little bit about this, but let me articulate them a little bit more here. So first of all, from a CapEx standpoint, to build the cooling system, including all the design, consultancy, project management, and compliance costs, and to replace the system, sometimes we may do the replacement in phased manner. You may replace some of it right away and some of it in 3, 4, 5 years later. Whatever it is, cooling as a service takes over the responsibility, not only providing the initial equipment and initial CapEx, but also on a continuous basis, if there is a further requirement, that will be taken care of. So from a building owner perspective, you do not have to put CapEx on the cooling assets. From an operating standpoint, you will have a streamlined set of operations. The most important thing about cooling as a service, when it is done very well, is that there's a whole lot of data that is continuously generated, and that is used for informing us about repairs and extended equipment life and reduced utility cost, and also keeping the uptime quite high. So the building owner, the mall owners like you, do not have to worry about any of those things. Should I call AMC? Should I give it to the OEM? Should I do it myself? All those questions are all taken off the table. And all you need to do is to really pay one simple rupee per RTH, refrigerant ton hours basis, for the purpose of cooling. So it really reduces it to simply paying at the end of the month a bill for cooling load. So the whole thing is a pay-as-you-use model, and there is no fixed OPEX. When CAS is done the way it should be done, there is no minimum cost, there is no slab rate. Everything is simply pay-as-you-use for the cooling, just as you will buy a utility, just as you will buy water, just as you buy electricity, you will only pay as you use. So there is no fixed cost. There is nothing like a facility manager's fees. There is no internal soft costs that are being passed on to. Nothing else is charged other than rupees per RTH. So how does it work? So today, off balance sheet, you buy electricity. And if you do generate solar power or anything else, that is almost like a separate business unit that is generating electricity. And water you just buy from somebody. Now, cooling as a service becomes just one more line item that you will use off balance in order to service the building. So on balance sheet, you already have lifts and lights. And as Dave alluded to before, more and more of these are actually becoming as a service as we go forward. So you get the benefits of resilience, productivity, and financial. More important thing about the financials is all your finance colleagues will tell you, give me some predictability about what you're going to spend every month. Give me some predictability about what is the budget that we should be putting in for the next year. Now, if you are maintaining it yourself, repairs and maintenance costs show up every now and then, and you can't really predict too much about it. You may have a forecasting and a budgeting for financial costs, particularly repairs and maintenance and overall in the beginning of the year, but there's no guarantee that exactly that is what is going to happen during the year. So whereas when you go into a rupees per RTH, you know the kind of level of consumption that you're doing, and you can very easily predict to a very high level of accuracy as to what is your financial cost. Sustainability, like I mentioned before, anything between 30 to 50%. In some cases, it can be even higher in terms of the carbon footprint reduction. Next slide, please. So I think this is, again, you only pay as you use. You can increase or decrease your consumption. There is no penalty in case should you use less cooling than what was originally envisaged. There is absolutely no problem. Just as you will pay just as much as you use for electricity, you will pay for this just as much as you use of cooling. You do not invest in the infrastructure. You're not responsible for the production of cooling or any other costs associated with it. And CAS provider will take care of complete design, construction, and operations, service and maintenance, repairs, and utilities. Go to the next slide, please. This is just a visual of we as a company have done several jobs across the world, and these are some actual visuals of some of the plant rooms. Next slide, please. So I'm extremely fortunate. We are extremely fortunate to have two important customers of ours who have actually implemented it, and they, because of their conviction, they readily agreed to be part of the panel in order to share their experience with you. First is Elpro City Square. Could go to the next slide. So it is in Pune. Deepak, the chairman and managing director, will talk to that very shortly. It's an IGBC gold building. Gold is pending, and the CAS commencement was in 2019. So it's a carbon neutral cooling. In addition to everything that I said, they also do 100% running on renewable energy. Next slide, please. In Orbit Mall, Vashi, it's again, Ravi Sibal is here, and he pioneered the group from comfortably moving from a traditional model to cooling as a service. This is one of the many malls that they have, and we commenced the operations in 2023. And there's a potential savings of more than 2.35 million tons of kg of carbon every year as we go forward. Next slide, please. So at this point of time, I would like to invite Mr. Deepak Kumar, Chairman and Managing Director of Elpro International, to share his actual experience.
Thank you so much, Raghavan, and thank you, Dave, for making the presentation. We as Elpro City Square and Elpro International Limited as a company, where I would say, or rather claim, pioneers of employing CAS, in turn care at our campus. So I'll just give a brief about our company and the campus first, and then we'll talk specifically about the mall. So as you can see, Elpro International is a publicly listed company on the stock exchanges since 1962. We are involved into a variety of businesses, which includes manufacturing of electrical transmission and distribution equipment. Earlier, which was with GE, and then we are into real estate, strategic investing, and various other businesses. As I said, the JV of our medical manufacturing, which was CT scanners, X-ray machines, and other medical equipment, was with General Electric from 1960. We then, since GE moved to Bangalore, so the JV was terminated in 1990s. We also had a JV partnership with PNB MetLife, and we were the largest shareholders in PNB MetLife after Shapoorji and MetLife and PNB. We have, again, a real estate portfolio of shopping mall, schools, offices, and R&D centers at our Chinchod campus. Can we go to the next, please? Yeah. So this is the overall campus layout, wherein we have got 40 acres of land, in which the various real estate assets are there, and CARE is part of it. So as you can see, CARE at two places. So CARE also serves our R&D offices and the pure play office space as well as our mall. And we are in plans of executing care at our school also, which is the Elpro International School, which you see, which will be shortly online. Can you go to the next? So this is the care plant room, which you can see in the bird's eye view. This is for our office and the R&D space. So you can see the various developments which we have in the One Elpro Park, which is known by the name of One Elpro Park. It's a multi-purpose consolidated development, which consists of office and BTS infrastructure. Then we have got schools, corporate offices, R&D centers, some tenants who are there in the automotive spaces and are big in the international arena, which is Varroc, Cummins, Mahle, Carl Zeiss, Sarvatra, Seiko, etc. Here, the total installed capacity is 950 TR, as you can see, which is mentioned. There are two chillers, each of 350 and one as a standby on 250. Max electrical load in the last 12 months has been 435 kVA. Can we go to the next? So now, since most of our colleagues are from the mall, they would be interested more in the Elpro City Square, which is the mall which we run. The total built up is around 1 million. The GLA is 5.54 lakhs. The total capacity of the plant room which we currently run is 1300 TR with two chillers of 475 each and one standby backup of 350 TR. The electrical load for the last 12 months has been 600 kilowatts. We are typically positioned as a neighborhood mall. We've got a multiplex, maximum number of food outlets, I would say, in the market of Pune. And then we have got offices on the top, along with a world-class auditorium, which is a very unique thing to have in a mall. So all this is being served by care from the very first day itself. Can you go to the next? So now the basic question which everybody would want to ask is that why we chose care and why not go with the traditional cooling solutions which we have in the market. So we were pioneers. I would say we started talking to care in I think 2016, 17. Then 18, we went and saw their work, what they had done in Singapore. And then 2019, we launched the mall along with care. So there was no it was not a transition, I would say. It was from very first day we had the clarity in our mind, because in our businesses which we run, cooling as a service was top of the mind, because as a service, as you would know, because world had already caught up to the SaaS, which is the software as a service. Now world is catching up to the electrical BaaS, which is battery as a service. So we knew that CAS is going to be a big game changer into the India market. And besides ours being a listed entity, so we had to take care of the ESG norms. Now you have to report your ESG norms to SEBI, and CAS would play a very, very major role into doing that. So that's why we chose that we would be going with care, so that we are able to manage our operations efficiently, cost also, and in return also get environmental sustainability points. So cooling is very critical to the operations of Airport City Square, and we wanted a very reliable partner, and which we found one in care. Can we go to the next, please? So over the last 5 years, out of which 2 years we were shut for COVID, as everybody would know. So there also we were able to save a lot because as Dave mentioned earlier in the presentation, that since it is a cooling as a service, so whatever you are using, you are only paying. You are not paying for any idle charges or any idle equipment lying at your end. So it was very beneficial to us to manage our cash flows. So since care is part of cash, so we have seen firsthand about our cost efficiencies, operational reliability, and sustainability take a good positive shifts. Now, the major part, as I would say, that since we are from the real estate and most of the builders are the owners of the mall, it also helps into managing our cash flow to the maximum possible extent, because you are not investing in your HVAC systems and is not part of our capex. So it's just a pass-through kind of a operations cost. So if you see, it's broken down into enhanced tenant and customer experience, cost saving and financial stability, operational cash flow and planning, operational efficiency and reduced downtime, energy efficiency and sustainability. So these are the factors which we have experienced firsthand as to what we have been able to gain when we tried and we experimented, and then we are now very, very satisfied into going with care. Can we next go to the next, please? So as I mentioned, since it is beneficial and it has tangible cost savings, as I was mentioning, that the capital outlay for purchasing the equipment is not on our balance sheet, so we are able to actually save on those costs, and then those finances are focused on other capital and operational expenses. Then second point is that since we are part of the cash model, so it is directly only linked to what we are using as a mall is the outflow to care. It's not about the all other extra charges which you need to pay while you're operating your own HVAC plant room. So that is also in a way gives you the peace of mind, and it's very clear cut, as Raghavan was saying, since it's a means it's just the operations cost which you need to pay as a mall operator. As was the presentation earlier shared by Raghavan as well as by Dave, that what we have experienced on our own, because we never had the traditional HVAC systems, but since we have put care, I would safely say by looking at the efficiencies at which the care machines and the plant room is running, we are at least, I would say at least, because there's a maximum cap to it, but since the summer months there's a bit of a efficiency lag, and then in the winter months the efficiency is far better. So obviously, if you do a median on an average, then at least there is a saving of more than 20% in the overall cooling related cost at our mall. Then again, since as you would see that most of the malls then probably who are running their systems on their own, the operators try to shut off the HVAC plant and only run on HUs. So here, since it is just part of care's responsibility, right, to cool the mall, so it doesn't involve any cutting corners or uh, actually cutting corners at the construction phase as well as the operation phase, because it is being done completely and solely by care. So it is in our benefit and in care's benefit that they make such an investment and such a plant room wherein no corners are cut and the best possible technology and the machines are installed. Can we go to the next, please? So again, the since the cash flow planning is well taken care of by only, as Dave was mentioning, that you already know what is the kind of outflow which will be required, and as Raghavan mentioned, that it is very easy for us to predict and give to finance that, look, this is the kind of outflow which will be required every month, which needs to be given to care, right? And it's very predictable because you have everything which is getting measured on the care side as well as from the mall side. So it is a very helpful and a transparent manner in which you can manage your cash flows. The second part is that, as I was mentioning earlier, since the plant room is constructed, so it's basically a design, build, operate kind of a affair. So since it is being operated by care, so there is no headache of running behind AMCs and then managing the people who are there, and so any unplanned breakdown also is the care's responsibility. So we as a mall can focus on our business rather than worrying about the HVAC and the cooling part of it. And so it gives you that peace of mind to actually focus your cash flows and your energies onto the business which you know best, and leave it to care who knows the HVAC business best. So so since it is as we said, that it is a very kind of a transparent and a very easy process to predict that what will be the cash flows looking like, and you can predict it much in advance. So as we do with the marketing expenses, so since we know that this kind of control which we get in terms of the cooling, so we can very well maintain that liquidity and probably channel it to other parts of the mall marketing or tenant engagement or other infrastructure improvements, right? And take care of those. Can we go to the next, please? So as we know that operational efficiency and reduced downtime is attained when it is being operated by CARE, because they have got that expertise and it is being constantly monitored from Singapore office, and they use top of the line AI driven systems, which is their KRT, which is a real time monitoring which they do, and then they can optimize the load at the plant room level. So now CARE is very transparent into sharing all the monthly PPMs, any blowdowns which might happen into the cooling towers. So this is also very helpful, because then it becomes very easy to know as to your what is the water requirement you might have, and what is the kind of probably maintenance schedule which you would know, and all your technical teams and CARE team can work in tandem to provide the best possible services to the tenants. Again, the last point which is there, which is the reliability of the system, which has been a game changer, because our tenants, because care teams are continuously there for us to monitor as to what is happening with each of the tenants. And even if there is a small amount of complaint, even it might be from the customer side, care team is always ready to help out and address those issues. Can we go to the next, please? So as I said that, since it is a cutting edge and energy efficient technology, and the performance guarantee is a signed document between us, so we are very, I think, satisfied by the way we have been able to manage with CARE. In addition, for CARE, there is the electricity supplied is through our rooftop solar plants, and the water being used is from our STP. So so as we said, that as we were discussing earlier, since we have to be reporting a ESG and we want to be a carbon neutral mall, so as an endeavor to that, I think CARE is very open to utilizing whatever green energy they might be provided with, and also the water which can be used from your STP plants. Can you go to the next? So this again, since CARE is taking care of the cooling loads and managing our HVAC system, so it has become very easy for us to actually coordinate with CARE team who are experienced onto the HVAC front. And if you realize that in today's context, any mall operator would give one single contract to any other technical service provider who might not be an expert in the HVAC arena of things, and then you might end up with problems mounting at the tenant's end, because they don't know what exactly is causing the problems. So here, since we have CARE and CARE backing us, so it becomes very easy to satisfy and address any issues which any of the tenants at the mall or the offices might have. Can we go to the next? So this was about our own experience from Elpro's perspective. So I just covered mall in a bit of detail, and as I mentioned earlier, that since we are also running offices as a part of the CARE portfolio, but typically since our colleagues from the mall were a part of this discussion, so I took up the mall in more detail. If somebody would have some questions, then we can probably address and look at answering at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deepak. That was very detailed and very helpful. Appreciate it very much. And now I would like to turn it over to Mr. Ravi Sibal, who's currently the head of the Malad Mall, but he was the pioneer who actually moved the Inorbit group, starting with the Vashi Mall, and he can share his experiences. And here is a little different in the sense that he transitioned in a running mall from the traditional method to cooling as a service. So over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Raghavan. Good evening, everyone. At the onset, a big thank you to SCAI, to Dave, to Mr. Raghavan for setting up the tone for this beautiful webinar. A big thank you to all the participants and a wonderful audience. And of course, a big thank you to Deepak as well for largely covering up the benefits what CARE has been giving it to you, and I'm sure it's very much in line to what we are getting. Our association with CARE started in 2023 December, so it's not been that long. But the story started way back in 2022 when we as Inorbit, and specifically Inorbit Vashi, decided to relook at revamping the HVAC services of the mall. Being a nearly 15-year plus mall, it was a very heavy need for looking at revamping the HVAC services. We were in the final stages of getting the new capex implemented, all approvals in place, purchase orders to be released, and that's where CARE came across us. And I still remember that day when my CEO told me that, Ravi, why don't we look at CARE? It's a very interesting model. And I won't lie, Raghavan, don't feel bad, but I did say that we are on the verge of executing our capex. So do we really need to look at it? But then he said, yes, why not? And I think it was the beginning of a great journey. I think we started working on it from 2022. The model sounded very interesting. As Deepak very beautifully covered up about the benefits, like the cash flow benefits that you get, the risk transfer you have, the cash flow that you save on can be put on to the other investments of customer experiences and other development and other areas of the mall. So yes, I mean, that's where the journey started in 2022. The model sounded very interesting. Yes, it gives you a lot of benefits in terms of your capex investment saving. But to tell you frankly, where we went ahead with CARE was the assurance, I would say largely the documented assurance or documented guaranteed assurance of continued and consistent service in cooling, which you get over a dedicated period of years, which was really amazing for us to hear. Today in Inorbit Vashi, we went live with the execution in December 2023. For now, we have already, I think, CARE has already executed brand new chillers. The cooling towers are up, and we can see that difference coming in not only in cooling as a service, but also in terms of operational cost benefits. Yes, we as a team are now able to concentrate more on other areas of the mall operations as customer experience, because the risk, the operations, the entire operations of HVAC comes under them. So yes, I mean, when we got associated way back, it was a journey where we had our own questions as to how would someone like CARE assure us that consistency of service and guaranteed health of our assets, which was the case. We largely went ahead with CARE. We are still in the preliminary stage of executing with CARE. It's just been about 8-9 months, and we are still in that stage where the capex are getting invested in the mall. But yes, we can see the difference in numbers coming in. We can see good number of 20 to 25% of saving coming in the electricity cost or the electricity units. And I think October is the time when we see that the bigger and the larger numbers coming into picture. Coming to the point again, when we went ahead with CARE, the idea was, of course, to a certain extent, the savings which comes in numbers, but also was that assurance and guarantee that comes about consistency in the maintenance of the HVAC plant, in the cooling, and the benefits and the convenience that our customers will get. Yes, they are now the one-point stop solution for us for anything in the mall. If there is anything that goes wrong with the cooling, we don't need to run helter and skelter. We just have a dedicated team which is there 24 hours of the day, 365 days of the year. And trust me, they're very responsive. So yes, the journey has been wonderful so far. But yes, we are looking for the larger numbers to start from October. Being impressed so much in the last 8 months with CARE, I can still tell you very honestly that we are looking to take this association in a much larger way, where we've already started working with them on 2 other of our malls, which is Malad and Vadodara. We are still in the stage of discussing and how things can pan up there. But yes, This discussion in the other two malls has purely got initiated because of the impressive professionalism, turnaround time, the numbers what we are seeing already flowing in the last 8 months. So yeah, I think the journey has been fantastic. I'll be more than happy to answer any detailed questions if you have by the end of this session. That's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Ravi. So I will, that's very, very nice. And I'll now turn it over to Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we've heard from myself in terms of servitization, Rag sharing some more details on CAS, and then some experiences from both Inorbit and Elpro. So thank you very much for all of those presentations. We now have some time to take questions from the audience around the presentations that have been given. We have some coming in, and you can please put them in the chat as well if you have any specific ones. One thing that has come in, so Rag, both Deepak and Ravi talked a little bit about transparency. In terms of transparency and in terms of the technology that you use and also the maintenance programs that you use, what kind of levels of transparency do you see with your customers? And especially also regarding data and making that available to your customers?
Sure. First of all, transparency is a very central theme of how we relate with the customers. So they will be able to see exactly what we are doing and the kind of equipment we are putting in, the whole installation commissioning work they'll be able to see. And they will have data that will be available to them. And what's very interesting is we have this app called Care Connect, which is a cloud-based database system. So the operating managers and the CEO of the mall group can easily have that app on their phone. They'll be able to see every day real-time data in terms of whether the plant is on or off, what's the chill water leaving temperature, what was the cooling consumption yesterday, what was the extent of carbon saved compared to their baseline, what was the efficiency yesterday, and what is the payment that they are making to CARE, where is the contract. Everything related to the mall operation on the HVAC side will be available to them real time, just not like a monthly report or a weekly report. It's available to them real time. So we believe in very high level of transparency, because here is the important thing, Dave. For us, it is a business, which is cooling. For the mall, the main business is to take care of their customers, to make sure that everyone walking through the door is kept comfortable. So we are extremely responsible for ensuring that we deliver that cooling to those customers. And therefore, transparency with the mall owner is an important element of how we operate. And we use a lot of data to make sure that happens.
Thanks, Rag. And I think, that sort of leads on to the next question that's come in. So Ravi, when you're making that decision to outsource cooling to a third party, I think that's where people that haven't moved to the as a service model before might feel quite uncomfortable. You're outsourcing it to someone else. Just in terms of that transition, how has it been for your team in terms of changing their day-to-day lives or operations as you've moved to the CAS model?
Well, to be honest, Dave, when we look at handing over this particular integral aspect of a mall, which is HVAC to a third party, if you look at the operations today at the mall, even today your HVAC plant is taken care by the third party. Largely, you have the third party professionals who come down and who take care of your plant. So when we were looking at CARE, we never had that in our mind that we are handing over our assets or our plant into to a third party. In my brief earlier, I was very specific in mentioning that one of the most prime reasons for which we chose CARE was the assurance that came in about a guaranteed efficiency, which came in very strongly, which is very strongly documented. And it is not for a shorter duration of time, mind you. It is for a good number of years, which was really amazing. I think we banked on the skill set that you guys carried on, with the assurance of the efficiency, which is continued over a number of years, keeping in mind the upkeep of all the assets that come in along with the capex investment you guys do. So yes, I think it was never a question about handing over the assets or the operations to a third party. It currently is anyways in third party hands. largely. What made us believe is the skill set, the assurance, and of course, backed up by many other factors such as the operational cost savings and the consistency of service that will come in.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was an interesting point that you made, Rag, around the fact that cooling as a service is our business, and then it's the shopping mall that looks after their shoppers and their tenants. So maybe this is for Deepak and Ravi together, and maybe Rag, you want to come in as well. What impact does moving to the as a service business model have on those end users? So you are, a shopping mall. Is there any impact at all on your tenants or your customers that you see? Maybe Deepak, I ask you to jump in first.
Sorry, Dave, I lost you in between. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the relationship between the cooling as a service provider and you as an operator. Is there any impact at all on tenants and your end users?
No, so it's a very unified kind of an approach. We are not saying that, look, we are Care is a service provider. We are a taker of service, and then we provide in return. So we are acting as one single team, as a mall only, because the tenant doesn't care whether you are from Care, you are from the mall, because they, at the end of the day, they want the guarantee of the chill water at a particular temperature and the comfort conditions for their own customers. So there has not been a single debate which I have come across in the mall wherein the blame game has started, that look, Care, as I mentioned, but that since Care is backing us up, so there's no tension in our mind that, look, it has to be delegated to some other party who's managing the technical services. It is the Care guys who take upon themselves to address all the concerns. So we have never come across a situation where there has been a conflict of interest, because Care as a service provider is not backing us up, and we as a mall provider, whose responsibility is to provide the HVAC solutions to the tenant, are facing any issues on that front in the five years which we have operated.
And Ravi, is that the same as you? Any changes to your tenants? Do they even notice that you've changed?
Well, a bit too early to comment on the tenant feedback as well as the customers, because it's just been about 8 months down the line. We're still in the execution phase of getting the new capex getting installed. But yes, I can confess that we can see the changes in terms of how the infrastructure is being managed, the turnaround time of getting the things executed. We can see the response time in case of some difficulties we face downline, and then we highlight it to you, and it's been taken care in no time. But I think the right time will only be when the entire project gets executed, say in the next 2 odd months, and then I'm pretty sure we can see the difference at the high side as well.
Okay, thank you. There's another one coming from the chat, which maybe I can answer. So the question is the building envelope design and construction part of Care's scope of work? It can significantly affect the cooling and heating loads. So it's a great question. Essentially, the shopping mall will dictate the requirements. So how much cooling do you need? What temperatures do you want in the space? And that can then lead down to what chilled water supply temperature would you like? Care can then customize the cooling as a service offering to deliver that. So we're talking about shopping malls today, but cooling as a service is used all over the world in data centers, shopping malls, offices, high-tech, high-spec manufacturing, process cooling. So essentially, you can dictate what you need, and then the cooling as a service provider will provide that. In terms of how much air conditioning you need, the building is responsible for that. So the envelope design and the construction of the shopping mall is not under the scope of the cooling provider, but that's generally already in place and managed. If that can be improved, then you can reduce your consumption. And I think that's one of the great things about the as a service model is that you can now focus 100% of your efforts onto reducing your consumption, as opposed to the efficiency required to produce the cooling. So that's left to the vendor, and you can see what you can do, and you can spend that capex on upgrading other parts of your mall to improve that.
If I may jump in and add something to that, Dave. So we are looking at two different aspects. One is how much cooling do you consume? And second is how much do you spend to produce that cooling? So we come in the second part, how do we help you produce whatever cooling that you require at a more efficient level? How much cooling will be required is primarily a function of the building design, and architects come in and you come to the conclusion. But here is the better part. Once you have got something going, you have every incentive to keep on improving. How less can you consume without affecting customer experience? Now, every dollar, cent, rupee benefit of reducing the total load consumption goes directly to you, because you don't have a fixed charge that you pay to the gas operator. You reduce your cooling load by 5%, you save 5%, which wouldn't have been the case earlier when you don't have a gas, except a very few variable costs. Everything else will not go down. Whereas here, everything goes down proportionately, because the payment that you're making is just as you pay, as you use.
Thank you, Rag. So we have one, I think, that's probably best for Deepak. So the question is, what is the percentage of actual savings? Has it been consistent over the years, or is it increased over the years, or reduced over the years? Deepak, what's been your experience?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, that at least since we never had that actual comparison, because we never had the traditional cooling installed at our mall. But I would safely say that at least 20% is the savings which we gather, because typically what IKW per TR, the traditional HVAC methods operate on in India, is between 1 and 1.2. And what we have as a guarantee with CARE, as you know, so minimum 20 to 30% is the savings, I would say, we are getting from CARE. And again, to reiterate the same point, because the question is from the aspect that if the machines are aging, then would the saving go down? So that is the beauty of CARE, because CARE as a cash provider is supposed to guarantee that performance, and hence the savings would either remain the same or would improve as you control your cooling areas or the kind of load by the management through the AI tools with which CARE comes with, and then probably manage that in a much better manner. So probably the savings would rather increase, not decrease, with the life of the equipment. But yes, certainly post 15 or 20 years, the degradation of the machines is such that it would require replacement. And again, CARE is responsible for doing that if you have such kind of a tenure signed in with CARE. So that is the answer to the question.
Thank you, Deepak. This is another one. So maybe this is, so I know, Ravi, you're going through the transition now, and Rag, you're very across that. So this is a question on operations. So for an operational mall, how does the transformation, how can it be planned in terms of timeline? What does CARE expect commercially in broad terms from the mall developer side? So managing that retrofit project, talk to me a little bit, Rag, about downtimes or planning that you're doing on that.
I think, yeah, I think when we went ahead with CARE, that was the most biggest question, that this is the operational mall. And with an execution of such a larger capex, how would that impact the operations? Because you cannot stop cooling in the mall, giving a reason that we are executing the new assets. And I think that's where the assurance came very strongly from CARE, that at any given point of time, there will be no hampering in the current cooling which is happening in the mall. It's been about 8 odd months. We have installed 2 new chillers. We have installed brand new cooling towers, from pumps to motors. And I don't think I can remember even a single day where there was a deviation in the cooling of the mall, which is currently there. So I think so far, it's been executed beautifully. I think largely the major part of the capex has already been executed, and I think we are in the final stages of rolling out the full plant. So yes, I mean, we as a mall, we as a brand never face any challenges in terms of any obstacles we faced in cooling in the mall during this execution stage. I mean, that was fantastic.
Thank you, Ravi. If I can just add a little bit, one is a matter of planning. When we sign a contract with a customer, we take over the mall 60 days after signing the contract.
Yeah.
So existing equipment, chillers, motors, pumps, cooling towers, everything we take over. From that point onwards, we operate the whole plant for them. Second is we do a very detailed planning. The question was as to what is the responsibility of the mall operator, the building owner. We will work very closely with the mall operator and owner and then detail out the planning. If no shutdown is an important criteria that we bring to the table, that means we just need to work out the details in such a way that there is no shutdown, because the mall cannot afford to shut down. So we work with the developer and the mall owner in such a way that there is no shutdown. So we have expertise and methods, work methods that will allow us to switch over to the new equipment as and when it happens, even without any kind of a shutdown. That's the beauty of it. Any given particular mall, what we do in each mall could vary, but however, no shutdown is a sure thing, and we can work out the details with the respective concerned mall in particular.
No, I think well said, Raghavan. I think I'm very much in line with you. It goes without saying, we at the mall work with n number of vendors day in and day out. But the experience with CARE in the last 8 months has been phenomenal in terms of the quality of execution, the turnaround time to be met, and timely updates. So that all comes with pre-planning, with the correct skill set, and the professional team that CARE has. So yes, I mean, from that perspective, it has been phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's also a question here around minimum consumption, and I'd like to take a stab at it generally and then maybe pass over to you, Rag. So the question is there any minimum consumption that you need to guarantee to CARE? And I think for me, this is a major part of understanding as a service. And also Rag had a slide that said, not all CAS is created equal. If you look globally, there are multiple providers that can support you across your organizations, wherever you are in the world. And all their offerings will be similar, but the contract clauses and the details are quite important. What I would say from a general framework is, if it's cooling as a service, you should not be tied into a minimum. If you use less cooling, you should pay less. If you use no cooling, you should pay zero. They shouldn't be tied to minimums. And likewise, there also shouldn't be maximums. If you require more cooling, if your business is going well, you're expanding your footprint, you're getting more tenants into your malls. We see this a lot globally, that people are putting more food and beverage into shopping malls. It's sort of a trend that we're seeing for malls to get more foot traffic into those spaces. You need more load. So you shouldn't have any minimums. You shouldn't have any maximums. And as someone who's been offering CAS for about 11 years now, we've gone through the COVID years. We know what happens when foot traffic goes up and down and essentially economies stop. And that can be managed. That's a business risk that the CAS provider has to take on. That isn't something that should be given to the customer. So no, there shouldn't be any minimums. There shouldn't be any maximums. And just also to elaborate on that, there shouldn't be any lock-in periods either. When I first signed up for Spotify, I didn't sign a 10-year contract that I couldn't get out of, and I had to pay a maximum subscription and give them a deposit for 10 years. It's a flexible model. You can get into it, you can get out of it. It's very transparent, it's very flexible. So I think that's one thing. If you are looking at moving into CAS and you haven't done it before, please reach out to Rag or any of the experts from CARE, but also look to the SET Alliance. There are lots of tools at setalliance.org around contracts, around pricing models, so how you can really look at transition to that. So please do reach out to that resource. There's another question here. Okay, around technology. So Rag, what technology in terms of the cooling technology do you use? Are you affiliated with any providers, or how do you choose what technology to put into what building?
Okay, our commitment is to delivered cooling levels, and our commitment is for delivered reliability. And we are equipment agnostic. What we seek out is what is the most appropriate combination of equipment, whether it is chillers, cooling towers, or pumps, which configured together can deliver the end objective to the customer. Now, as all of us know, every equipment has got a certain performance curve. And we also know every client side, every mall cooling loads have a certain requirement curve. How do we match them? Now we match the building load requirements, building load performance. It's almost like a fingerprint for a building, and what combination of equipment can actually deliver what we are promising to the customer. So we source from some of the top equipment suppliers in the country, and we are equipment agnostic. We have worked with almost every major equipment supplier in the country, as well as you know, globally, we work with all the global manufacturers. So what is important is to understand that it is not one or the other of the equipments that really is going to deliver the end result. It is the combination of them, and it is how we operationalize them using our controls. The real-time controls, which is CARE real-time controls, and the BRICS, which is the artificial intelligence-based operating system that we bring in, is the one that is going to make a huge difference to whatever be the landscape of equipment that we have. So very often, I'll just take another 30 seconds, Dave. Very often, people tend to look at it saying, hey, if I change this chiller from this to this, I should be able to get it. The important point is, it is just not the hardware alone. It is a orchestration of multiple hardware and using a data-based control system, which helps you operate it on a daily basis, hourly basis, minute by minute, second by second basis. How do you get so much data, and how do you really use the data to really bring out the best, efficient, and reliable system is what is important.
Thank you, Rag. So after we talked about the tools that were available, as I mentioned, on the setalliance.org, we do have a question on that. So maybe Deepak, this one is for you, or Ravi as well. As a customer, how do you train your teams to procure CAS? And is there anything that could be helpful to support your teams to procure CAS solutions more easily? Maybe Deepak, you could jump in on that. Any hurdles or difficulties you've had when you wanted to procure it, and anything that would have been helpful as you went through that journey?
So I would say that definitely it was one of its kind when we were going into CAS. But since as a pioneer of CAS ourselves in our other businesses, wherein we produce conveyor belts, and the conveyor belts which we supply to Australia, North America, there it is used as a use per dollar per hour kind of a basis, wherein the belts are being used for bringing out coal from the mines. So the belts are not actually purchased by the miners, but rather it is on a pay-per-use basis. So we already had that idea, and that's why we went big on CAS when we wanted to bring it on in terms of HVAC for our mall as well as the office portfolio. And again, there was a push from the government itself, because we are a listed entity, as I mentioned earlier. So it is your responsibility to report on your ESG guidelines and what all initiatives you are taking as a listed entity to be. So it was both easy for us, I would say, to get convinced as a company. That is number one, because there are regulatory frameworks around it. And then again, you have certain benefits and advantages once you are adopting a clean technology in terms of both the financial as well as your social impact onto the company. So that is the reason why we went for CAS.
Thank you, Deepak. There's a few questions coming in for you, Rag, around sort of some more details around the procurement of CAS. So one is there a minimum square foot area or tonnage required to offer a CAS contract?
Well, really speaking, I should say there is no minimum. But what in reality will happen is the larger the mall, the greater is the significance of the decision. If you take a very small mall, and if the total numbers we're talking about are not very large, even the mall owner may be not very incentivized to go for it. So the bottom line is, please take it as there is no minimum, and we can work with each of the malls to understand their requirement and see what can be a solution under those circumstances, and see whether it is attractive enough for the mall owner.
Yeah, and I think building on that, so I mean, working with the SCAI Alliance as you expand not just to shopping malls but to different users of cooling. On one side, so we have partners and energy partners in South Africa that do huge industrial installations for industrial clients and customers. So food production, which has huge amounts of requirements. And then also we have a company called Cool Blocks in Africa, which is doing small sort of containers, refrigerated containers for farmers that want to take their vegetables and their produce and stop it from spoiling, and that's offered as cooling as a service as well. So really, you have the innovation within this space at the very top end and large installations, and then also very, very small ones. And I think it's fruitful for the customers and the providers in everything in between. You just need to make sure that you have the right cooling system that's tailored for the use where it's being applied. Another one for you, Rag, everyone's most important question, cost. What is the cost per BTU offered in CAS model versus a traditional plant operations?
One word answer is it will be lower. But the real number, it's difficult to give a real number because a lot of variables go into your current cost. For example, what you're spending today is a function of how big is the plant you have, how old is the plant, what are you paying for power, what are you paying for water, and what is the current level of efficiency, and what's the capital cost that you have. It depends on so many things. Therefore, under a given situation, we take the current conditions and then we'll give you a CAS solution, which will always be anything between 10 to 30% cheaper than what you're spending per RTH. If the question is intended to elicit a number, rupees per RTH, it's difficult to say only because the input cost from mall to mall, location to location, and from where you're sourcing the power and water varies. But one thing is that in every situation we go in, we're able to see that you will spend less than what you're spending today.
Thank you, Rag. So Ravi, this is one for you. Did you encounter any unexpected challenges during the implementation of CAS? And if you did, can you share more about them and how they were resolved?
Well, yeah, I mean, you do come across very unpredicted challenges which you can't even think about. Yes, I can say, yes, we came across a challenge which largely was under the purview of the mall. But then, I mean, the way CARE came forward in holding hands and getting that sorted for us for the betterment of the entire execution of the project was excellent. So I think that showed the culture from where CARE comes in, where it's not just that we are working in silo, but we are working in tandem with the mall operations, and if there is any way they can be of a help to us with their expertise and skill, they can come forward, and in this case they did come forward. So yes, I mean, nothing as a challenge from CARE, but I would certainly say that they came forward in helping us out in an operational challenge from a mall side, which was important to be solved for the execution of the project.
Thank you. And then another one on data and transparency. So I think this is for you, Rag. How do you see big data and artificial intelligence impacting the way that you operate as a cooling as a service provider?
Yeah, I think we already have a certain level of maturity in leveraging both big data and artificial intelligence, more in the form of a machine learning built into our existing system. Let me just say something about it. Our data, operating data, is captured for every chiller system. We probably have about 20 data points. So if you are having a plant with about 4 chillers, you can be sure that we are collecting anything between 60 to 100 data points every time, every second of the day. And it is recorded and available in our whole database. Now that is being used, number one. Number two, as the machine learning happens, as years and years, or even weeks and months and years of usage happens of the particular plant and the particular customer situation, there is accumulated learning that comes into informing us as to how the plant should be operated. And there is a certain predictability built in. So we already have reached a certain level of using big data, and we've already reached a certain level of using machine learning. Now, I think, as Dave, you yourself will allude to it, we believe in a technology stack for our company. We will never rest with what we have already done, because technology world is continuously evolving, and there is a lot more that is going to happen on the front of AI that we will be always on the lookout for, and see how we can incorporate them into bringing the benefit to the customers that we serve.
Okay, thank you, Rag. I'm a little bit conscious of time. I do want to hand back to the team to wrap up. We've only got 5 minutes left. Just one last one for you, Rag, and then maybe I'll ask Deepak and Ravi just for your final. One question we had was, as someone who's done this either recently, Ravi, or a long time ago, Deepak, what advice would you give anyone on this webinar when looking at sabotaging their operations? So I'll come to you in a minute. But just quickly, Rag, there's a question on lock-in periods. So how long is a CAS contract, and are there any lock-in periods? How many years do you see in your contracts?
The contract we usually sign for 15 years, but we do give the capability for the customers to, exit after 3 years. That's because it takes a little while. As Ravi kept saying, we are in the project execution stage. It takes a little bit of time to put the whole thing in place and really have the customers see the final benefit. So contract is for 15 years. Lock-in usually is 3 years, but all these are subject to conversations and see what makes you comfortable. We want to make it easy for people to transition to CAS, because the loudness of the benefits of CAS are far more outweighing than the mechanics of how we get into it. So we want you to taste the benefits of CAS, and therefore, case to case, we can discuss, and that will never come.
Thank you, Rag, and I think that's something you should always check with your cooling as a service provider. I think you should really make sure you stay true to the principles of as a service. So as you're procuring it, you should ask these questions. Are there any lock-in periods? When I moved over to Spotify, I didn't have a lock-in period. I can exit whenever I wish. There are lots of subscription-based models now where you can go in and you can go out as you wish. So I think you need to make sure that there's a maintained as you're procuring that. So lastly, then, before I hand over to Angie to close for us, any advice, Ravi or Deepak, to anyone on the call today who's potentially considering cooling as a service, or anything else as a service for that matter? So maybe Deepak,
so
you jump in.
Yeah, I'll take it first. So far so good. So there's no harm into trying a new model, and wherein that all your downsides are protected and the upside is yours to take. So in our case, I think we have been able to stand true to that, and with the help of CARE, we have been able to substantially reap the upsides as well as cover our downsides. So in a business manner of speaking things, it is very, very beneficial. Apart from the benefits which I laid out during my presentation, specifically as a mall, there are other aspects to it wherein I was seeing that somebody was asking what are the benefits of having in a commercial office space or an industrial office space. But that's a separate discussion to have. But in a mall scenario, I think it is one of the most best suited model to have and to deliver the promised cooling to your tenants who are banking on you, and to the customers also. So I think it's a win-win for both of us, rather the three of us, the tenants, the CARE, mall, as well as the customers.
Thank you so much, Deepak. And Ravi, any final advice for anyone?
Yeah, I mean, from a mall perspective, I think it's a very interesting model which should be looked up by probably every mall. I think it fits the bill from every aspect, from transparency to cost saving to capex investment to energy saving, to sustainability, from carbon emission, from tenant convenience, customer convenience. I think it fits the bill in every aspect. So yes, I mean, being a model and being a business, I'm sure it also benefits you to the deal that we get into an agreement. So yes, I mean, it's worth a model looking at. As I said, we have already started looking at this model for our other two malls as well. So yes, I mean, for me, it's a green signal. I mean, every mall should look at this model.
Thank you very much. So I'd just like to thank Ravi and Deepak for your time and joining Rag as well for the panel session. We have unfortunately run out of time. There are a few questions left. So what we'll do is we'll try and take those in the chat
No,
function.
Dave, what I would suggest, see, 3 questions are there. We can extend it. Please, if you want to cover them, please do that. Timing is not a constraint here.
I think it's okay. So there's around the opportunities. So maybe this is one for you, Rag. What are the major opportunities as you see in commercial or industrial market? In industrial, what are the major challenges to implement CaaS compared to commercial?
I think the opportunity is somewhat similar across the board, and it's a question of customizing for a given landscape. So I don't see any challenges either in industrial applications or commercial applications. Only thing I would say in the case of commercial application, let us say if it is a question of office, the recovery model by the developer from the tenants is something that needs to be weighed in such a way that the benefits of CaaS pass down to the end customer, and there is no business process that is coming in the way of the end customer getting the benefit. The end customer should get the benefit of lower costs, and also the end customer should get the benefit of sustainability metrics. So if that can be modeled in, it can be done. While in a retail mall, it's very simple. In commercial, that requires to be worked on. Other than that, I don't see any change, any challenge, either from a business model point of view or technology point of view.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Dave.
Thank you.
So I think
so thank you very much to all of the speakers. Again, Ravi Sibal and Deepak Kumar and Raghavan, thank you so much for joining us. I'll now pass it back to Angie for any final comments before we close the webinar.
So we had a very interesting and a very informative session. In fact, the shopping mall industry got exposure to new facilities which are available. And what we will do is we will post this webinar, this discussion in YouTube also. Plus, we will be circulating it in our All India group so that the people who have missed this webinar, they will get benefited. So with this, thanks Dave and Raghavan, Deepak and Ravi for sharing your thoughts and views and explaining the things in such a lovely manner. So I thank you all on the behalf of Shopping Center Association of India. With this, we end our today's session. Thank you once again. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.